my gratitude to you, Reverend Biko Bodhi, and to Buddhist Global Relief for this opportunity to be with you and to witness the incredible work that you are doing to transform compassion into action. This is what we need the most, especially nowadays at a time where we see injustice being applied on every level. We see injustice, systematic injustice that is leaving children starving in many parts of the world, and that are also creating levels of trauma and pain and suffering for the people. So at this time, I find myself and I find the work that you do at the core of the Buddhist mission, at the core of Buddha's mission, which is to alleviate suffering in this world. And I want to thank you for fulfilling and continuing the work that Buddha started, and for fulfilling the mission of Bodhisattvas as well. I was moved specifically hearing about the children in many of the presentations here, because the way how I see children, I see myself in the story of the children that you have shared. And I see that children are innocent of any guilt or crimes, and they deserve to live in a peaceful and free conditions and situations. And it pains me that in the 21st century, with the advancement of the technology that we have and the access to so many resources, that we are still seeing and witnessing life streamed in many situations, children suffering, whether if it's suffering in the body, such as hunger, or suffering in the mind, such as trauma and pain and loss. Now, my story myself, I was born, for some of you who may not be aware of it, I was born and raised in a refugee camp in the West Bank of Palestine. And as a child, for the first 10 years of my life, I witnessed that suffering. I lived through that suffering, the suffering of the body. The refugee camp itself was established in 1948. So I was a third generation in that refugee camp. After the Israeli government has forced my family out of our lands, out of our homelands, which is Israel now. And the camps have developed from tents into metal sheets houses, into mud houses, and now it's a concrete jungle. The level and the conditions that people live in are very painful conditions, very little privacy, very tight space, lack of sun, access to the houses. And even when somebody is injured, you have to put them on a stretcher and move them from one house to another, and sometimes using a sledgehammer to open windows between the walls to allow the stretcher to pass through the houses to the street. And I remember that there were many times during my time as a child in the camp where I went to bed hungry. And we had the UNRWA, which is the United Nations agency that was providing basic help with food and medication. And unfortunately now, as some of you may be aware, has been suspended from functioning in Palestine and in Gaza as well. So the work that you are doing is such significant work, and it's a work of compassion and a work of creativity, especially at a time where we see unjust governments trying to suffocate systems that have been established in order to alleviate suffering and help people. Now, my transformation happened when I came to America, because even though the suffering that I mentioned was basic suffering, there was a much larger suffering that I have witnessed as a child. When the Second Intifada started, which is the uprising in Palestine, I witnessed my best friend getting shot in front of my eyes as a child. And as you might imagine, such action can leave deep scars and deep levels of resentment and anger and hurt internally. And that was not it. I witnessed also my uncle who was saturated in blood after the Israeli army killed him on my birthday, on my 12th birthday. And that was not it. I saw people shattered in front of me and collected their body parts as a child when I was 12 years old. I collected pieces of their bodies, such as fingers, and peeled off skin from the walls and put them in plastic bags to honor them. And then I was shot myself in my leg when I was 15 years old. As you might imagine, this creates a deep level of resentment and harm, and anger as well. But when I came to America at the age of 24, I was introduced to Buddhism, and Buddhism has transformed my life. It has transformed my life in a way that it allowed me to actually regulate my emotions. It allowed me to be present and aware of my emotions. It allowed me to manifest and to practice compassion towards the self and towards the others, empathy towards the self and towards the others, including those who call themselves my enemies. And it has transformed my way of seeing life, about the interconnectedness of all beings, and that need to alleviate suffering, that my pain is not separate actually from my oppressor's pain. So at Columbia University, I became actually escaping the tyranny of distraction that New York City provides, and the level of stress that I was not used to. I found myself going into the Buddhist Association and meditating with them. And shortly after that time, the board comes to me and they nominate me to lead the Buddhist Association. I was very surprised at that point, and they said, well, I am not quite Buddhist, but I am practicing Buddhism. And what they responded to me, they said, you are Buddhist, but you don't know it. You have the Buddha nature. And I said, it's a great honor for me to serve in this role. So soon after I joined the Buddhist Association in terms of leadership, I started leading it. I was fascinated by, and we would bring usually a master teacher every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. We would do a meditation and then teaching. And I was fascinated how that was very transformative, not only for myself, but for Columbia community and the students who were joining. And the community continued growing and growing and growing. And during one of the most special celebrations, which is the Vesak celebration, I spoke to the Buddhist community from Columbia, from New York City, and from New York as a whole. And I shared with them the urgency. That was in May 2023. I shared the urgency to bring Buddhist monks and nuns and master teachers from the monasteries to the communities, because it is much, much needed. As you could imagine, in October of 2023, just 5 months later, we see the horrific, painful events unfolding in Gaza and in Israel, and the genocide that has unfolded. So that practice, we bring it from just from compassion into action. And that was my time to practice my Buddhist practice and to showcase that we can actually demonstrate, we can protest, we can raise our voices for justice, and still not only nonviolent, but also doing it from a place of compassion and empathy. Unfortunately, that compassion and empathy was perceived by the US government as a threat. And as a result of that, I was imprisoned, and I am still being persecuted with no charge, where the government is trying to put me back in prison. This is, as some of you might know, It's not only an attack on me because they are targeting me. I am a green card holder. I worked in this country. I paid taxes. I respected the law. But this is an attack on every non-citizen in this country, and eventually it will get to citizens. Now, at this point in life, I see the urgency more than any time before. Because what we are witnessing nowadays with the interconnectedness, our conscience and awareness with the interconnectedness of the internet and technology, we see how the world is connected, and we see the danger unfolding in every part of this world. We see the destruction of democracy, the destruction of international order and international law. And we see the danger that this might pose on humanity as a whole, where it would not be surprising to see a nuclear war or complete domination by the techno-feudalist community in this world. So now we are working at Columbia University to continue the work for justice, to bring more spiritual communities to work together to build a much larger unity. And the direction of this to restore and reform international law and enforce it by mechanism of investment, such as investing in initiatives like the Buddhist Global Relief and divestment from other initiatives that are violating human rights and human dignity. I'm truly honored to be part of this meeting, and thank you for all of the work that you do. I would close by saying, may we be well, may we be free from suffering, and may we be truly happy. Thank you.